speaking with Todd Robinson before the lecture, I silently lamented I haven't taken any of his classes. I really missed that. Professor Robinson has been a member of the faculty in the Department of Animal and Veterinary Sciences since 1996. He earned a Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees here at BYU and earned a PhD in Animal Science at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. He has written several articles on llamas and other camelids, articles such as Body Condition and Blood Metabolite Characterization of Alpaca Dams and Nitrogen Balance and Blood Metabolite of Alpaca Fed 3 forages of different protein content. I'm waiting on the movie for those ones. These studies conducted here have a tremendous application to millions of lives around the world on those who rely on alpacas and llamas, and hence the interest in Professor Robinson's research. We are honored today to have a skilled and prescient scientist with us, Professor Todd Robinson.
Wow, what an introduction. I lost my screen up here. Oh, okay, we go. This is a great opportunity for me to give this lecture on a subject that I find interesting and that brings me a lot of joy as I go about conducting it. About 5 years ago, if somebody had asked me what an alpaca was, I would have laughed and said I have no idea. And then to have this type of an introduction, you guys are probably laughing. And but as I go through today's lecture, hopefully you'll understand more about what a camelid is and how it is used throughout the world, where it comes from, and quite a bit more about it. The South American camelids originated here in the Rockies about 16 million years ago. It is thought that what they did is they migrated from the Rockies here, some crossed the Bering Strait and went to the Old World, or Africa and so forth, and became what we now know as the camels. And then another group migrated south across the Panama area there, and then continued on into what we now know as South America. In South America, at the time, they were used primarily as fiber sources as well as nutrient sources for the people. We know that as the Spanish conquest came through, a lot of these animals were decimated. The flocks of these animals were decimated to provide food and so forth for these conquerors. This is one of my students who is affectionately being kissed by an alpaca that we call Cheeks, and this is the type of animal that we enjoy working with. As the population, or as the time progressed, we now know that the Incas used the camelids as part of their nutrient base, but also for the fiber. And the fiber is a high quality, and there's been evidence shown that in the Incan leaders, the kings and so forth, that a lot of their clothing is made of alpaca fiber, also vicuña fiber, which is another cousin to the alpaca. Now, what I want to do is go through and explain some of the different what the camelids are. There's 4 different species of camelid. Here we have an alpaca, and you'll notice his kind of dreadlock fiber. This is an animal that has about 2 or 3 years worth of fiber on it, and this fiber is basically in a swirling weave, and as they shear this off, you'll get hair lengths of about 8 to 10 inches in a 2-year span. Llamas, on the other hand, are a large a larger species of the camelids, and they have a coarser fiber than the alpaca. And again, the fiber is used from the llamas. More of the llamas are used for meat in South America, even today. Here's another group of the alpacas that we have, or the llamas that we have here at BYU. If you notice the ears on this llama here, llamas are characteristic of a banana-shaped ear. And so if you're driving along and you see these fine animals, you'll be able to tell the difference, not only in size but also by their ears. The alpacas have straight ears and the llamas have curved ears. Today in the world there are about 7.9 million, roughly 8 million camelids. This includes about 45% of those being llamas, another 45% being alpacas, and 7% being these animals here that are called guanacos. And the guanacos come from an area, or now originate in an area down in South America, the lower part of Chile, down around the Straits of Magellan. In this area, in Chile, Argentina, these animals roam freely. They're the wild type. And so we've talked about the llama and the alpaca. These are the domesticated versions of the camelid. And now the guanaco and the vicuña, the vicuñas here are actually the wild types that are present. These are animals that have not been domesticated over time, and in some areas are now becoming a nuisance because of the numbers that are starting to regenerate. As you look at these four camelids, the vicuña, the guanaco, the alpaca, and the llama, the fiber on these animals is quite different. If you can see the vicuña, they have a white cape. They're all the same color, kind of a light tan, and a light underbelly. These guanacos here that are in a captivity project in Chile, southern part of Chile, look similar to the vicuña, but the difference is the size. The vicuña is about half the size of a guanaco, and so in looking at them, the llama is the largest, the guanaco, then the alpaca, and then the vicuña. With these animals, the main use for these animals again is meat for the South American producers. Also, the fiber, which is has some characteristics in and of itself that lend itself to being used more readily than sheep. As most of you have felt sheep fiber next to you in a sweater or so forth, it scratches, it itches. This is not the case with camelid fiber, and the reason being is that it does not have the scales on the fiber that the sheep fiber has, and so, or the sheep wool has. And so fiber from these animals is highly sought after, and right now the world market, it's about $3 an ounce for this fiber, and you can get about 2 pounds to 3 pounds of fiber off of for each shearing per year. And so you can see that there's quite a bit of money that can be made from the sale of this fiber. And consequently, if you've gone into a store and tried to buy an alpaca fiber sweater, you're looking at $300–400 for a high quality sweater. And the reason being is because of the non-scratch factor. These camelids come from an area, or presently are found in an area, what's called the Altiplano. The Altiplano is an area in South America that has an elevation of between 11 and 15,000 feet. It's a plain, large plains that are up at that area, in that area of South America. This right here is a map showing, this is La Paz right here, and La Paz, if you look at it, it's just kind of down in a bowl. And so that's about 11,000 feet for La Paz, 11 to 13,000 feet. Then you get up here, and right now we are doing work here in an area called Viachi Letanias, and so we're trying to do work at the elevation that the animals originate from. Now, I told you that there's about 8 million animals, or 8 million camelids worldwide. About 52% of those camelids originate or come from or found in Peru at this time, 36 in Bolivia, and then the rest are scattered around, about 2% in Chile and so forth. Here in the United States, we have a population of about 0.2%, and so basically about 98% of the camelid population still resides in South America, where it is used quite heavily. We were given information by the Bolivian government that about 5 million people on the Altiplano use camelids as their sole subsistence. And so you can see the importance of camelids in South America. Here in the United States, it's more of a, I don't know if I want to call it a fad, but it's an animal production system that is just coming into its own. In 1984 was when the first alpacas were introduced into the United States. Llamas were introduced much earlier, mid-60s, and they've kind of, their population in the United States has gone through kind of a bell curve to where it's not so much a bell curve, but it's pretty much leveled off as of now. They're not quite as popular as they were back in the early 70s, but they still hold some novelty. The alpacas, on the other hand, because of the quality of their fiber, an industry has been produced in the last 12, 15 years that is actually looking at trying to promote alpaca production for the fiber from the animals. And so if you were to go buy an alpaca from a producer right now, you'd spend in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000. At BYU, we've been lucky enough to work in collaboration with a large farm here in the United States, actually in Washington State, called Alpacas of America. In that, this producer has actually donated the animals that BYU has. And so right now we have approximately 220 to 230 alpacas. They're all males. We tout that we have the largest non-reproducing herd or flock of alpacas in the world, pretty much, in that they're all castrated. So, getting back to South America, in South America, these animals pretty much range on this type of forage. They're in the mountains, they're in the plains, in the valleys, and there's not been a whole lot of pasture development that has occurred in that area. Also in this area, the camelids are a part of their rituals, their festivals, and you can see the bright colors of the native Indians there as in a festival, and you can see that the llamas and the alpacas are included within a lot of these festivals. Here you can see a llama that actually is all duded up for a festival. Each farm has their own ear yarn color, and that's one way that they can tell who the animals belong to. And so as they're out grazing, you'll see ear yarn kind of waving in the breeze, and the producers down there can see those and tell which animals belong to which producer. So it's kind of interesting to see how they tag their animals, how they identify their animals, and then how they use them or incorporate them into their festivals. This is looking at an area that has quite a high number of llamas. This is in Bolivia. This is at about 16,000, 17,000 feet. When we were up this high, down there taking these pictures, you took a lot of breaths and hoping to grasp a few oxygen molecules because you're up so high. But you can see it's a pretty much an arid environment for these animals. And they'll go out and they'll graze, just free graze. And so, as I was mentioning, there's not a whole lot of pasture development that has gone on. And so as these animals have gone through and they've grazed down this land, they've been grazing the grasses that they particularly enjoy, small succulent types of grasses, and leaving what you can see here as a bunch grass. And this is very coarse. There's a couple of pictures here that they're bunched together, and they're about the only thing that's left. And so this is something that we're trying to address, and I'll go into more in more detail here in just a few minutes. But it's interesting to see when you go down to South America to see these animals just grazing around in the hills, and seldomly, as you're going around there, you'll see the woman, the wife of the family, the mother of the family. She's the one that's actually doing the herding. They call them churlitas down there, and they're dressed in native Indian apparel, and so you can distinguish them from and actually distinguish where they come from. Here we have some llamas that these are wild llamas. These really don't have an owner, and they're actually running around on some ruins that are down in Bolivia, Incan ruins, and you can see the walls of the ruin here, and over here on the right, there's actually a big hill that they felt was a palace for the ruler at the time. So it was kind of interesting to get this picture of these wild llamas running around next to some ruins, 1,000 years after the people were actually inhabiting these ruins. Here we have some alpacas that are at the lake, what they call Lake Titicaca. It's a large lake around that is on the border between Bolivia and Peru, and you can see that they have some blankets on. Llamas and alpacas are both used for as pack animals, and the picture that you saw for the announcing this lecture is a typical the life of a llama or of a pack animal in South America. They asked if they wanted to put a picture of me up there, and I said no, that would just scare away everybody, and so I don't have one or two people here, the students that I've bribed to come to this, that would have shown up. But now that's a little bit of a background on what camelids are, and so it's interesting as we've had the camelids here at BYU, the llamas and the alpacas, and the two guanacos. It's interesting that we've actually had people come and tell us that we are crossing llamas and sheep and coming up with a llama. That's not the case. The secretary told me one day that she had a woman that was very forceful, saying, yes, you are raising llamas, and that's not right. But they're not llamas. Llamas and sheep can't breed. But yet llamas, alpacas, guanacos, and vicuñas can interbreed, and they can interbreed with the old world camels, which is kind of an interesting cross. They have done that with a llama and a camel. Now, why BYU? About 4 years ago, a group of us animal scientists got together and wanted to address some issues of an animal in an impoverished country. And so as we looked around, we pulled in Luis Espinosa and Alan Christensen, who represent the Benson Agricultural and Food Institute, a part of the College of Biology and Agriculture. And they gave us an idea that, camelids would be a good idea, a good animal to work on. They come from Bolivia, they come from Peru and Ecuador, which are areas that are impoverished. And also, the Benson Institute has the infrastructure that would allow us to go down there and actually conduct some research. And so we have Dr. Beverly Roeder, who is a veterinarian working on animal health, Paul Johnston, a nutritionist working on nutrition, Val Anderson, who is a range scientist who's actually looking at, can we improve the pastures, can we improve the rangeland so that these animals can flourish more so down in these countries. Dr. David Koyman, who is looking at genetics. There has been very little that's been done on genetic improvement of these animals, and so a lot of the problems that they do have are crooked legs and other genetic deformities in these animals. Dr. Roy Silcox has been working with reproductive physiology, and then Ernest Hawkins has been working with the meat, different meat products for in use of the animals down in South America. And then myself, I am a self-proclaimed growth biologist by trade. So we are looking at these different issues, and so that's basically why at BYU. We've also been given the mandate that the work that we are to do is to benefit not only the students but also to benefit the world. And so in a small part, this is our effort to benefit a people, roughly 5 million people in South America that solely subside on camelid production. At BYU, we also have the opportunity to go to schools, preschools, elementary schools, and as you see, we actually went to a junior high school. And we take the animals and we introduce these animals to students who otherwise really wouldn't come into contact with them. I told you that there are basically roughly 7% or about 500,000 guanacos in the world, and here at BYU we have 2 of those. And so we enjoy taking these animals. We have a few students. This is a nursing student here at BYU. And a veterinary technology student that actually took these animals to these different schools and actually enjoy watching children interact with these animals. I was asked before the lecture, do these animals, do they have a mind? And my answer is yes. These animals are very inquisitive. You can see this alpaca here looking at little Nico. And they're very inquisitive. Each of these animals that we've worked with has a personality. They are in each individual, and one thing that perturbs one animal, has no effect on another animal. And so it's interesting. It's fun to actually work with them and to learn their personalities. We also teach students. We have several students each year that go through courses that where we show them how to draw blood. I chide my students, if they can draw blood from an alpaca with that long neck, they can draw blood on any animal. And if you were to go out and ask them that today, is that true? I'm sure 99.9% of them would say, yeah, that's true. And the other one would say, no, just despite me, so don't ask her. No. But it's enjoyable to teach students here at BYU this animal that not a lot of people come in contact with simply because of their low numbers. Here in the United States, there's only about 150,000 camelids, 200,000 camelids, and a very small number of those are alpacas. Why do we have them at BYU? This is another reason. I made a trip to South America, to Bolivia, and I am in awe of the children. I go back every year, several times a year, just to meet with the children, just to visit with the children, and to look into their eyes, and know that hopefully somehow I'm making a difference. May not be into their life, but into the life of another child. Right here are 6 children. They took their picture. We took their picture. We videotaped them, and then we turned the videotape around to let them see what the videotape was. And just all the screams and the oohs and the ahs was fun. But the saddening part of this is a little 7-year-old. I'm kneeling down. I'm not that tall. This little young lady, if you look at their legs, they're very undernourished. And when I got back into the vehicle, when we left this village, I was told that one of those children will not be here in a year. They will have died of malnutrition. To me, that was shocking. That was my first trip to Bolivia, and I've been back almost a dozen times since then, working feverishly to try and come up with different ways to help these children. Of the 12 million or so people that die each year of malnutrition, 5 million are children who die of protein malnutrition. Okay, and so just a piece of jerky a day will almost quadruple or quintuple their usual daily nitrogen intake or protein intake. For us, that is nothing, but to them, it's important. The work that we do is in collaboration with the Benson Agricultural and Food Institute. This is an institute that was organized to help impoverished countries learn agricultural and food techniques in an effort to better their way of life. And better their food supply. What we have done with the Benson Institute is we have sponsored Bolivian thesis projects. Undergraduate students in Bolivian universities are required to conduct thesis projects and to actually write a thesis. I've looked at some of these theses, and we're talking 100 to 120 pages of writing, of research that they've conducted. It's impressive. And so we've helped to sponsor research that has gone on with these students. We also sponsor BYU undergraduate students to go down, and I'll show you a couple of pictures of some of the students that we have down there right now. And then we've also struck up a collaboration with an organization called Project Concern International. Project Concern International is similar to the Benson Institute in their focus and in their mission, and so by collaborating with these entities, hopefully we'll be able to make a difference in the protein intake of these children. This is one of the projects. I'm showing you the clean project, the clean pictures. This is a reproductive physiology or a breeding project. And so this is one of the males that they were using in the project. These are some of the other Bolivian students that were working on that project, and some of the llamas that they are using to gather their information. Being able to sit down with these students and talk to them about camelid nutrition or camelid reproductive physiology, and seeing the gleam in their eyes as they explain to you the work that they're doing is very gratifying to me and to the other scientists that we're working with. Going down there and actually interacting with these students, they're bright, they're knowledgeable, and they're eager to learn, to work with us, to work with BYU students, and to disseminate the communities. We actually, as part of the Benson Institute collaboration and supporting their thesis, they have to actually come back and provide information to their communities. And so in doing so, the information that they learn, that we learn, is disseminated through these students. And what that does is that raises their status within the community. Now they become a somebody in the community, an expert at something, and their status in the community is elevated. And so in that respect, we are promoting the status of these individuals, increasing their wage earnings by increasing their status in the communities. This is a graduate student of mine that went down to Chile and spent 6 months down in Chile gathering information on alpacas. And one of the papers that was mentioned in the introduction was her thesis project, her master's. She went down and she worked with 40 alpaca females, mothers, and actually went through the birth of 40 of these little crias. And so they actually became part of her her life. These were actually her babies that she went out and protected. And in doing so, has provided some information that we are now working in other areas to learn more about these, the birth and nutrition of these animals at an early age. Now this is the way a faculty member would really like to see his students, their ears perked up and looking eagerly into the eyes, into the face of the faculty member lecturing. But these are guanacos that were actually down in Chile, that they were doing that they had collected as young and that they were trying to domesticate down in Chile and also in Bolivia and Peru for the vicuñas. These animals are starting to become a nuisance, and that they are competing with sheep, or they're coming in and eating the products, the grain and so forth of the producers there in these countries. And so what they're trying to do is learn more about these animals so that they can start to domesticate them and start to gain some economical value from them. They're very highly protected in their countries that they're in, and so doing anything with these animals is very difficult. Our research approach that we've worked out here at BYU is basically three-pronged. We do intensive research here at BYU that is very closely monitored. We work with our students here at BYU. We work out the details of certain projects, and then we transfer that to a research station in country, or in Bolivia or Peru or Chile, and we actually do the same type of research there. We are at an elevation of what, 5,000, roughly 5,000 feet, and so if you go up another 10,000 feet, that has a drastic effect on the physiology and digestive physiology of these animals. And so trying to figure out how that we can feed these animals at 15,000 feet is a lot different than down here at 5,000. But the research that we do here at BYU not only can be transferred to Bolivia or countries down there, but can also be used to provide information for producers here in the States. And so that we feel is also important. Now, the research that we do in country is through supporting the thesis students that I've talked about. We also do some of our own research down there, but the information that is gained down there is disseminated to the in-country producers. Otherwise, it's of no use. And that's one of the problems. There's been a lot of research done on camelids, but it's been done in South America. And once the research is done, it's put into a thesis and then put on a library shelf, and it's not disseminated. And so we're trying to change that so that the producers, the community people who are living off of these animals, can actually gain from the information. Again, we're working with pasture development, pasture management. Down there, your pasture is my pasture. If it doesn't have a fence around it, it's fair game. And so what we're trying to do with some students down there is to set up some pastures with some different grasses, allow these pastures to grow and mature, and then bring the animals in, in a controlled environment like we use here in the United States. And so the animals are getting more out of the pasture than they are out grazing the bunch grass that I showed you earlier. It's kind of a cycle down there. They go through 3 months of rain, which gives you about 2 months after that of green grass, and then it's just the grass looks like straw growing out, or as you saw, the bunch grass. Very low quality forages, and so it's important that we work with these producers in trying to increase that quality. So as we work with our students, we teach them skills. They get an opportunity to work with other universities, with other students. The 2 students that are working down in South America right now in Bolivia are actually linked up with a Bolivian student, and so the 3 of them are actually working on the same project and learning from each other. These are the 2 students that are down there now. We've gone down and we've put together a lab facility there at Letanias, and so these 2 students are, as you can see, really enjoying themselves. And I really haven't heard any, this I really want to come home type of thing. They're just saying, oh, we're loving it. In fact, they've been down there about a month and a half, and they're finally starting to get the hang of the language and the culture down there. The neat thing about this is a life-changing opportunity for these students. I had a life-changing experience when I was down there, and guaranteed that these students are going through the same thing as they are working down there. These are a couple of the llamas that they're working with and these are called metabolism crates. And so what these do is they collect urine, feces. We can collect blood from the animals and get an idea of what the nutritional status of the animals is, given different forages, different feed supplements, and so forth. This is one of the alpacas that we have here. This is just showing you a collection harness. And I keep sticking that thing in my pocket. The harness, you can see the red bag right here. It collects the feces. And then right here they have an upside down plunger that collects the urine, and there's a hose connected to that is vacuums the urine off, and so we're able to get a good collection on the urine. So my students, and actually my kids, think that that's all I do all day is just come to work and play with feces and urine, and they think it's pretty disgusting. These are some of the alpacas. You saw Cheeks earlier, Cheeks the alpaca. This is another picture of Cheeks when he was in one of our metabolism crates. After this project, we retired Cheeks to the pasture, and also because he's so tame, we take him around to some of the elementary schools and let him nibble on the cheeks of some of the students. These are some students that are gathering blood samples. We put catheters in these animals, and so it's a one-time stick, and then we draw, and so it's pretty much painless. The only pain that they really get is when we stick them to get the catheter in them. And that's pretty much my presentation. I hope I've introduced you to the life of a camelid, why we have them here at BYU, and some of the work we are doing. I will close by saying that we try and include in the mentoring process as many students as we can, trying to get them used to working with these types of animals. I had one student that asked me, well, told me, I'm really not interested in alpacas, but I'm really interested in horses or cattle and something like that. And I said, well, you learn it on alpacas, you learn it on cattle. And so we try to give them an experience with a novel animal, and they're allowed to to take those techniques and apply them to other animals. And hopefully we do that with the Bolivian students that we work with as well. So with that, I'll close and ask for any questions.
This is probably some South American folklore. But some of the people tell me down there, and some of the scholarly types, that because alpaca bones are not found in archaeological sites until very late in comparison to llama bones and vicuña and guanaco, their story is that the alpaca is a mix of the llama and the guanaco. That's one question. And another, and I'll sit down, is in the old world, the animal breeders have developed quality products from their animals by interbreeding selection and what have you. I haven't heard anything about that here with the native camelids in South America. Are there different qualities of the animal products being produced by that breeding?
Okay, to answer your first question, yeah, I have heard that, but as of late, I think they've actually come back and with some DNA testing and so forth, and found that that the alpaca is probably closer to the vicuña than the guanaco or the llama. If you look at the names, the llama is llama glama, and then the alpaca is llama alpaco, and so they are they were thought to be closely related. As far as your second question, they're beginning to do a lot of selection. They have done some selection down there in trying to keep the alpaca bloodlines pure and the llama bloodlines pure, and so they really frown on interbreeding and trying to improve for instance, the fiber quality of the llama. There's not been a lot of intensive selection like that we do here in the United States. If you look at some of the first alpacas that were brought in, they're probably their best that we brought into our country, but they have changed quite a bit in stature and in quality as of late, as compared to the early ones that were brought in. There's a lot of effort right now to actually start doing more genetic improvement in the animals, looking at fiber quality as well as away from genetic deformities.
I know that, or at least I heard that back like a long time ago, there was actual cease of exports of camelids to North America because of worry about disease. Is there problems now with North American camelid inbreeding problems, or are they solving that with sending semen and things like that instead?
They did, as far as llamas, I'm not sure that they have closed the llama. You can still import the animals, llamas and alpacas, but the alpaca registry is actually closed it to any new imported animals. And in doing that, it's an effort to try and improve the quality of the animal. As far as the inbreeding, I think they've got it figured that they've got enough in that they won't have a problem with the inbreeding for a while. And that's not to say that down the road that there will be a problem. If that happens, then I'm sure they'll open up the registry again, or if they feel that. The disease problem right now is foot and mouth disease, and Bolivia, Peru, and those countries down there are do have foot and mouth problems. And so to bring them into the country, what you end up doing is putting them into a quarantine. Right now, the United States doesn't have a quarantine facility, and so it has to go into Canada and then brought down in. So.
A few weeks ago, I was working with some of your students trying to find some references on use of meat from the alpacas and llamas. What extent do the people down in South America actually use them to eat? I've heard they're mostly pets and they, or beasts of burden. They work
Right.
for them. They don't use them.
The main uses of them, I don't know if uses is kind of a wrong word, but production of it is for the fiber and for pack as beasts of burden, pack animals. But they are pushing, or not pushing, but they are building a meat market for the llamas. Some of the negative has been that they don't slaughter them until they're 3-4 years of age, and that's maturity. If you've ever eaten mature cow steak, it's pretty leathery. And so they're trying to change the minds of the mindset to get them to take them to market earlier. Also, what they've been doing in the past is they've been doing an air drying, a sun drying salt product, jerky, and I tasted some of that, and I can imagine it pretty much tasted like salted cardboard. So it was pretty nasty stuff. It didn't have a whole lot of flavor, just the salt. And so some of the work that the students that you're talking about are doing is trying to come up with different ways to cure the meat or to add spices to it. And that's going to take some cultural changes. They do. There are some food scientists down in the universities down there that are trying to get some different meat products started, and it looks appealing. The typical diet down there is potatoes. In Bolivia is potatoes, eggs, and then corn kernels about the size of your thumbnail with the meat. And so if you go into some of these restaurants, they'll actually serve you llama meat with this type of a meal. And so it looks very appealing. And so it'll be interesting to see how we can improve that. That with Project Concern, that's one of the projects that we're actually pursuing is can we improve or increase the amount of llama meat intake, especially in the children. So it's high protein, low fat. So any questions?
Well, let's thank Professor Robinson for his presentation.
Thank you.